So just going back to the Rashba with Dinei Mamonos. So we want to say what we said yesterday was that what makes this minhag, this is different than the normative minhag, because this is not a minhag for shmiras and mitzvos. Rather, you're adapting. Business practices change, so the halachic system has a mechanism that allows for, in a sense, an adaptation to that very change. So if in society X they do business a certain way, Kosher Mishpat has built into it a certain elasticity that allows you to adapt to that, to take that non-Jewish business practice, it gets a stamp of minhag and becomes incorporated into the halachic system. Yes. That we'll get to haskama in a second, but once it gets to haskama, so now that is considered the appropriate Jewish way to do business. Stamp of approval. You're bound, like in the case by Rava, right? The guy went ahead and took the other guy's shlita remains, right? One second, he took a shlita remains, right? Now, one second. Halachically speaking, right? If that wasn't a minhag, so would he be allowed to do that? It's gzeila. I can't walk into some guy's thing, right? And the deal we made wasn't a halachic deal. There's no deal we made. We walked into the normative secular consortium business practices. That's what we accepted upon ourselves. We didn't accept upon ourselves a halachic shtar. We said, oh, we're part of this union. We're joining the union practices. Yeah, like in Rava's case.
What is the category?
Minhag.
What is min?
All these asur lav or love. I can't be over it, and I'm bound by it.
What is that brought into?
Into its category called minhag. Halachic system. We'll see in the Rambam different types of things. There's gzeros, siyagim, gdarim, takanos, minhag. Part of the system. It's part of the halachic system. Halacha says that is part of the system, right? And to the point where if I went ahead and then if I got a haskama, I have every right whatsoever to enforce that minhag. Right? So I can go and take the skin of the behemoth, even though halachically speaking, we say it's gzeila. But so the secular practice has the means of, in a sense, redefining it. So that's an adaptation, because without that, then business wouldn't operate. You understand? So let's say, just make one more point. So why we answered this yesterday? Why does the Gemara, I mean the Rashba also, why do they use the term haskama? It's interesting, right? It's the only time we see haskama. What's haskama here mean? What? It should be the haskama here is not like by regular minhag, where the chachamim can come along and determine something is minhag tos, because that minhag. Those minhagim are shmiras and mitzvos minhagim. This is a minhag where you're not determining, because you're not saying whether the thing is legitimate or not. Rather, what you're doing is that you're saying that we accept this as being a legitimate, adaptive process to the business practice. In other words, we're masking that this thing can be incorporated into normative business practice. Not because there's nothing. By other minhagim, what are chachamim there to do? This is why I'm saying haskama. What are the chachamim there to do in other minhagim? What are they trying to figure out? What meaning? Is it adding to your shmiras and mitzvahs or not? But you can't tell me that if shaking hands after a business deal, that has nothing to do with your shmiras and mitzvahs. That when they investigate it, they're not investigating it to figure out is this harmful to your shmiras and mitzvahs or not, because there's no relevance to it. So what are they doing? They're coming, but if the chacham wasn't involved, what would it be lacking? Hurrah! So what they're coming along doing is they're saying that this practice is one that is what? It's simply that we're agreeing, we're masking, we agree that this can be accepted as a halachic business practice. Okay, that's all they're doing. You notice they're giving like the what? All right, so we're up to the last minhag now. So what does Rashba say? No haskama. So you have minhagim where now this is the hardest one. You have minhagim that what takes place in these minhagim? No haskama, no rabbinical input whatsoever, right? Lo beis in gadol. Keep going. Right, and it's not only does beis in gadol not get involved, but what do you have? You don't even have like a consensus, right? You don't have a consensus. Yeah, no, but so you don't have like a citywide consensus, all right? Yeah. Okay, Ella, now this is like, what does he mean by that, right? He said it's the minhag. The minhag is to do it this way. The minhag is to do X this way. Of what? These people. and a person's not makbid on it.
How many people?
Let's look at the Gemara.
Family.
The Rashi is saying the last category minhag is a minhag where it's not really, there's no askama, it's not universal. It's like let's make it simple. Like let's say like among dry cleaners is like you'll see like a certain it could be some of them are practiced this way now. Some don't, or the way the business people, the way the customers act. It's like a very subjective phenomenon. Yeah. Right. So Baba Kama Kufya Tesam and Aleph. This is one of the cases cited by the Rashba. Go. All right. So what's the case? The what? A launderer. Right. So he's doing laundry. So what happens? Right. So look at Rashi. I know everyone did Rashi. Rashi is a kobes motzi. Mibeget semer. So you find something what? Something, a small thing. What? Davar muat. Right, something that the average person would think what? But not that it lacks value. It's not that it's less than a shava pruta. It's something insignificant, but not less than a shava pruta. If it's less than a shava pruta, then there's nothing to ask here. Okay, and the person he's not. So remember, the guy's laundering that balbais to the customer. He's not makbid on it. Okay. Uminadin hein shalo. Really, that you got to appreciate what Rashi's telling you. Halakha, who does this belong to? This is not Yeush. It's not Yeush. Who does this belong to? The guy, the customer, right? But since he's not makbid on it, so he says, I'm makbid lo havek veda, right? Oh, what does that mean? What does that mean? I'm makbid lo havek veda. No, hamakbid. Hamakbid means, right? Take like when you go to the dry cleaners, right? So they'll have a big sign up that'll say what? Not responsible for lost objects, okay? Now, is that a halakhic idea? No, all right? The dry cleaner is saying, this is how I'm running my business. All right? So when you go in there, even though mipi halacha, if I find something, I'm really high to return it, right? But I can put up a sign that says, not responsible for any valuables. What Avi's saying is good. Now, don't ask me all the parameters here, because minhag, you'll see there's obviously something subjective here. But there has to be a certain point where this gets absurd. For instance, let's say, to be ridiculous, let's say, like what the mistake that Mati made before, right? Let's say I find a diamond, all right? And you can't tell me that the guy, you can tell me the guy is not over Xela if he keeps the diamond? That's a little crazy, right? Or is it? But it's very, not, I'm leaning seems like Deborah Muad, right? I mean, that's an insane value, So nice stuff. So we have to understand what's going on here. What are these cases? That's why I'm choosing this last Gemara. Go to the last Gemara. Last Gemara is the best case. Tanur Rabbanan. Right. Kufya Tes on the base in the bottom. Last Gemara. So what does that mean? Cutters, chippers, right? Because what are these? When you're cutting down, when you're mining, well, let's use miners, okay? When you're mining, what's going to happen as a result of mining? You're going to have a lot of what? Chips, right? So what does a guy do? You're not getting a repetition of this. So he keeps. So at the end of the day, he's got like a big bag filled with what? Rock chips, right? So can he keep that? Well, it's worth more than a shava pruta. Is he allowed to keep it? No. Or look at the next case. No, so Gemara says that's not gezel. Right? Mefaske gefana, menafke. Now, what do all those cases have in common? Well, hold on. So let's use gardening. Okay, that was a case I told Ari before. Let's say I go to someone's house. Let's say I'm a gardener and I mow people's lawns. All right. So like those lawn mowers where as you're mowing the lawn, attached to the back of it is a big bag, and it's collecting all the grass stuff. Now, does that have value? Of course it does. First of all, I could take that stuff and maybe I could plant it. Who knows? There's some value to it. Now the question is, can he take the bag of grass things, what? Shavings, and can he keep them? Flipping. So what does the Gemara say? The Gemara says, Bisman Shabbai is makbid alav, right? Why would a Ba'al be makbid on it? Maybe he wants to use it, right? Maybe. So when the Ba'al it goes based on each customer. Well, I shouldn't say that. It goes based on what? What is it based on? Right, but we got to be careful when the Gemara says. Right. Okay. Right. Good. We don't mean Baal bias that I have to, because if it really meant Baal bias, then what would I have to do? Ask each guy, what do you think about so and so? No, what it's saying is that let's just give it nafkamina in West Hempstead, so people don't care about their grass shavings, but in Beverly Hills, people might be a little more concerned about what you do with the grass shavings. Okay. Example. I should use that's a great example. No, you're right. You see that people today, some people, you can have a certain area where people don't care about the grass shavings. Other ones, they want to use it for compost. So then who says you could take the grass shavings? Use cutting trees as an example. If I cut a tree, so what do you think? What do you say about the branches that I cut off? Well, on the one hand, they have value, so don't they belong to the guy? On the other hand, he wants you to cut the trees because he doesn't want the branches on the trees anymore, right? So what's Minhag coming along to tell us? What's this idea of whether the Baal is makbid or not? And I think this is going to be another one of these universal ideas that's going to apply to all Minhagim. Let me take Arya's case. Arya's right. Let's say like this. Let's say the normative practices is that if you find dimes in people's pockets, right? Fine. That no one really cares about it. But I happen to be someone who does care about it. But when I gave my stuff into the cleaners, right? I didn't say anything about it. You're bound by the minhag. You can't say now, but I'm mocking on it. It won't work that way. You understand? I just want to know, why is this called minhag? What is the minhag? What does this mean? What is the minhag doing here? What? There's no halakhic thing to it, but it is. But there is though, because if the neighborhood's common business practice is that if I find something in the dry cleaning that I can keep it, that the dry cleaner can keep it, right? You're bound by that. I can't walk in there and say, you're over gzela. He's not over gzela. Even though technically speaking he stole it, he's not over gzela. What is this step? So there's something going on here where halacha never addresses this phenomenon, right? Now, but what do you mean by that? You're right, but think about it. What could have been the solution to this? Right. Well, okay. Just think about my question. How halacha could have solved this problem and chooses instead to rely on this for a very practical reason. Another. That was a good one. Another. What I want to say. All right. So we also see that what's happening here is that the niyug is in some way creating some sort of halachic reality. Okay, that's also good. Now start putting it together. So now what's happening here? This is each step. So say it again. Say it again. Hey, be quiet. Be quiet. Say it again. Right. So let's take a step back, okay? Because I want to deal with mamonus, but then I think this can apply to all minhagim. Again, that thread what I was looking for. But let's take mamonus for a second, okay? In monetary matters, okay? How far can the halachic system go? But it didn't, because you would never have business operate. In other words, if I was required, think about what's being said here. Halacha can't say to me, okay, well, you know what? You have to investigate every customer that comes in and ask him every parameter possible about what he thinks about everything I could possibly find. No. The system was never set up in a way. It's an amazing thing. I mean, you got to understand what the Gemara is proposing here. Halacha, there's a certain point. There's like a line. I can't tell you what that line is because there's an infinite number of cases. But there's only so far the halachic system will go, and you're going to hit a certain point where in every one of these cases, there's two directions you can go in. Right? There's Zela, or I can keep it. You understand? Halacha comes along and says, we're going to allow minhag to come along and determine for you which direction to go in. You understand? Halacha can't legislate past a certain point. There's a line halacha has where... That's what I mean. Right. In other words, halacha can't get involved in the infinite. Right. Halacha, and now, by the way, let's get back to Arya's point. So when it comes to rock shavings, I don't care about the reason why. When it comes to rock shavings, so that's normal that halacha comes along and says that this is not considered A, but not vis-a-vis the halachic system, because halacha doesn't get involved in rock shavings versus leaves versus branches versus, let's say today. What? What? Correct. Right. Exactly. But the halachic system does, because how could it? Because, for instance, values of objects change. What was valuable back then is not valuable today. there's no mechanism that would be employed in the normative halachic system that would objectify these things. It would be, forget, if you think of enough svarim back there, it would be an infinite number of pages long. It would be absurd because we have to take into account constant changes in business practices. So what's Minhag doing? What is Minhag? So again, what is Minhag doing?
Define normal behavior.
It's saying, it fills in a sense, the way I put it when I was praying, and it's almost like the catch-all of the halachic system. Minhag functions in an unbelievable way. Minhag functions to go ahead and fill in a gap that naturally exists in the halachic system. And that's what I mean by it's adaptive. That's going back to what we were saying before. That the point of adaptive now fits into here perfectly. Halakha goes up to this point here, but it purposely left gaps, okay? Because there's society changes. No. The gap always existed. It's part. I'm going to say this carefully. Part of the halachic system. Part of the halachic system. Listen. Part of the halachic system is the very tolerance and acceptance of those gaps, and then the minhag comes in to fill those gaps in. That's what minhag does. The halachic system. It's part of it being lo b'shamayim. In other words, part of the idea that you guys got to appreciate the greater. Hold on, the greater idea here. And the idea of lo b'shamayim. What is lo b'shamayim means? What? That man is involved in the process of, in the halachic process. He's involved in the halachic process itself. So in order for that to take place, if the system was set up as an infinite system, meaning that it could somehow cover every phenomenon, then where would man? There's no. It is b'shamayim. It's a b'shamayim system, right? So minhag in many ways, minhag exemplifies. Minhag exemplifies the involvement of man in the halachic process. Because what is it? Halacha stops at a certain. All these things have that in common. Halacha stops at a certain point and says, Bnei Yisrael have the right to inject themselves into these gaps and figure out methods of how to adapt the system to these situations. So let's take the case of Orez. All right, let's take your mafresh Orez dough. All right, and even though you know it's not challah, let's take that case. All right. So what is that? What's going on over there? What's the gap? Where's the gap? What gap are we talking about? Because the halachic system can't tell you every way that you feel, in a sense, that will be a greater shmiras and mitzvos. Can't do that, right? So therefore, okay. So let me give a better case. I'm sorry. Forget the Hamon. Let's take a chacham comes along. And the chacham says, you know what? In Miami, in Detroit, this would be a good halachic practice to do. Okay? Well, you don't have to say Detroit, but I'm saying he says this would be a greater example. This would be a greater shmiras and mitzvos. Fine. No, but fine. Let's say somehow you worked out halachically why that would be better. Somehow it's a better thing. Okay? So what's he doing there? What he's doing is that, but halacha doesn't say anything about that. If I open up my Shulchan Aruch, there's no mention of such a thing. But minhag means that halacha only goes so far. And when it comes to areas, and you'll see the Rambam says this openly, when it comes to areas like shmiras and mitzvos, so there's a gap. And minhag is the adaptive process that takes those gaps and fills it in with something. Once it becomes something, once it becomes a nihug, halacha comes along and says, now, how do you treat it? As halacha. And that's what it means by minhag kitorah dami. It means that's what it gives it acquires this chalo shame. Because as far as the adherence concerned, it's no different than any other d'Rabbanan. Insofar as how you relate to it. So when it comes to Orach Chaim stuff, it seems that gap, again, we have the categories before. We have the minhag hamon, we have the chacham. You want to know today who's allowed to do it? Back then, certainly people had smicha. If you had smicha and you're Baal Hara, you had the right to come along. Oh, 1 second. But when it comes to mammonis, it's really talking about in order for business to be able to work, you have to tolerate these types of things. Because in the business world, there's no way the halachic system can come and legislate to you, well, if it's, you have to ask the customer every possible scenario that can emerge. Such a system can never exist. You understand? It would not be a lo b'shemaim system. Okay? So mammonis is a paradigm of that example, but I think it exists in Orach Chaim also. It's the same in any area, right? Whether it's about shmiras and mitzvos or whether it's even about this, the point is that there are gaps that naturally exist in the system. Minhag is the catch-all. It's there to.
I know it is.
Halacha doesn't care. Halacha says we stop at this point. Okay. The main point I want to get across is that these things take away from the notion of lo b'shamayim. If the Torah was able to sit there and legislate for the infinite, right? Then the man would not be engaged in a halachic process. Forget siyagim. Right? Siyagim is the clear one, but even here also, that's what minhagim are doing.
What would the ideal be for man to legislate?
Right. To end at least from the Rishona's perspective. Now look at the Rambam in the Hakdama Perish Rishnayos. Pinsky, go. All right, so the laws of the Torah are divided up into how many categories? 5 categories, okay? This is real meta introduction to Torah, okay? Kla. Kibalti. So what is he saying? What's the first category? What? No, don't give me. That's actually the second category. What's this first category?
First category is things we could figure out, but they weren't.
Perushim hamikubala mimoshe.
We got them, but they weren't.
Right there. So we got the explanations from Moshe. Sheyesh lahem remez bekasuv. Okay, and there's some hint to them in the Torah, or we can learn them out using one of the Yud Gimel Midos. Okay.
We don't necessarily know them.
Right. But the point was that information, there's no, again, when you come to the conclusion, okay, have you come up with a chiddush? No.
We figure out how we know the most Messina, but we never argued on the law.
Right. So when you come up to the conclusion, you haven't come up with anything new. Maybe you've used an intuitive process and the midos, blah, 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 to get to that conclusion, but you have not done what? You haven't created anything new. Okay? Second category is halacha l'Moshe Sinai. So what's the difference between the first and the second? What? Okay, so therefore what? You're right. So therefore what? What? No, don't use the word belief. You can do better than that. We know it's no machlokas. There's no machlokas by the first one either. What's the difference? Let's throw an example of halacha l'Moshe Sinai. Kazayas. Okay? What's the difference between our knowledge of Kazayas and whatever that first category is? What do you mean it's purely Masoretic?
Is that we have no part of it, we just got it.
Right. Okay. When we got Kazayas, we got Kazayas. We didn't get like a remez or, there's a hint to that idea, and then you have to use this darshanat halacha. These aren't levels. These are just different categories. Halacha l'Moshe Sinai, that is what it is. We know it's Kazayas. Period. Okay? We know Kazayas is the axiom. It's an axiomatic idea. It's not like the Perish Rekubal is, we got the explanation from Moshe. Right now, the only question is we have to know how to get to that point. But halacha l'Moshe Sinai is this is what it is.
How is it more like the first side of the
This is what the Rambam is focusing on is halacha l'Moshe Sinai is not derived. There's no machlokas in Kazayas. There's no machlokas of is it Kazayas, or is it Grogris by let's say whatever.
Right, but one of them said it was very easy.
Okay. Now you have Chelek Shlishi, Hema Dinim, right? All right, so what happens? So the third chelak, you have laws that are again they're learned out through the Yud Gimel Midos, and then machlokas comes about, right? All right, so now this should be somewhat familiar. You have what happens here? We're dealing with doraisas, right? Okay, and they're using the Gimel Midos, but the problem is that you have machlokasim, right? You have differences in the application of the Yud Gimel Midos and its conclusion. So now you have a problem. You guys should be expert at this by now. What do you do when you have two competing logical positions? What does halacha always have to do to that? What? No, it can never make one superior. How can one be superior over the other? No, it can't make one superior. No, one's not over more superior. So what does halacha have to do? Rove. What's rove? Rove is an external machriya. Like he says, "Menisak behemadin kedas harov." Why rove? Not because Shammai's better. Yeah, exactly. It can't be. It does no matter what you say. Because if you say, you're right, either way it's gonna endorse that idea. Because if it is something that
wants you to follow Rove, or Hashem wants Rove to be followed.
Correct, exactly. So whatever. Okay. Beautiful. What, you giving a fort? That's a beautiful fort. Okay? That's when you get engaged. You give that fort over her. What does Hashem want? Oh, like this. Beautiful. Let's just clarify. I don't think it exists. You can have Isser versus Heter. Let's just finish what he says. Okay? Now, okay. So he says, V'lachein omrim. Oh, so I'm sorry. So Mehmed Varmorim Kishadavar Shakol. Okay? V'lachein omrim imalacha nekabel imudin yesh tshuva. V'lo tibo machlokas umaso matan el b'chol mashalo shemanu bo Kabbalah. That's the key. Argument only emerges when there's a lack in the Kabbalah. If it's before from Moshe Sinai, so then you're never going to have an argument that emerges of a Isser versus Heter. Because then, as Avi was saying before, when you plot your Gimel Midos, you're always going to come out with the right conclusion. But when there's a lack in the Kabbalah, in the Mefurish Kabbalah, so then it's not like an automatic that I plug it into a machine that spits out X, but rather there's some creative element to it, and therefore
there is no right answer.
Exactly, there's no right answer. So what has to tell you what's right? Rov.
The right answer is whatever they come up with.
Correct. They're both equally right. If I use Yugim Midos to ascertain A and use it to ascertain B, and there's no Kabbalah, so your machlokas Isser versus Heter, right? So then, how are you going to know which way to go? We don't know. So Rov comes along and tells us which way to go.